What is up guys, and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, what I'm going to be doing is discussing how to gain 1,000 arena points per day in Fortnite. This video is going to include all sorts of strategies and tips for arena in chapter 3, which will allow you to speed up your point gain like crazy, whether you're trying to reach champs or simply grind as many points as you can get. Before we get into it though, if this video helps you out, then be sure to drop a like on it and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more tips and tricks content just like this in the future. And last thing before we get into the video guys, if you want to help your boy out a bit extra, then consider using code Teckoh in the Fortnite item shop. It's absolutely free for you and it really does help out a ton. But with that said and without further ado, let's get into today's video. So there are a few little things I want to discuss before we really get into the juicy part of this video. First off, I want to discuss game modes and more specifically which game mode you should play to gain arena points. I did discuss this topic in my first arena video this season, but I know a lot of you guys watching are probably brand new to the channel and haven't seen it, so here it goes. In chapter 3 season 1, my top recommendation for arena is actually going to be trios, which is closely going to be followed by duos depending on your situation. What I mean by this is basically how many good players you have to play with. If you have two really solid teammates to play with that you play well with, then I recommend you play trios as it has the best points per team killed. However, if you have a duo that you're really good with and you don't have a third, then I wouldn't recommend you go out of your way to find a third unless you can find someone super skilled, as duos is very similar to trios in terms of points, and trios is only marginally better than duos assuming you have a solid team. So overall, trios is my top recommendation, but duos is very good as well and comes in as a close second. And honestly, unless you're a very good solo player, solos really just isn't that strong this season. You never know if they might change that in future seasons, but maybe in season 2 they'll make it so solos the meta, but right now it's definitely duos and trios. Moving on from that though, the next quick topic I want to discuss before we get into the juicy part of the video is going to be the point system. Now I did discuss this pretty in depth in my last arena guide, but instead of going in depth on every little division in the actual video itself, I'm instead just going to pop up the point chart for each division in this video. So up on screen is going to be the point chart for solos, and now is going to be the point chart for duos, and finally here's the chart for trios. Each chart is labeled with the division, the bus fare, the elimination points, and all the placement points. So you can refer to these charts based on your division and of course which game mode you're playing as well. I figured it would be better just to give you guys the full point system chart rather than being all fancy about it. So with that said, let's get right into what you're all waiting for. So for this video, my main focus is going to be on playstyle and how your game should actually play out while you're grinding points. I'm not specifically designing this for one game mode, but I mainly am thinking of duos and trios when I'm making it, although it should still apply to solos for the most part as well. So without further ado, let's get started with early game. So getting straight into early game, and the first consideration to make is your drop spot. Now if you're looking to maximize your points, there's no doubt that you'll need to get some kills off spawn, but you also don't want to go all out and play too aggressive where you're dying off spawn constantly. So you're going to want to find a good middle ground spot where you'll maybe find another team or two, maybe 2 or 3 players if you're in solos, but it shouldn't be too contested where it makes it hard to survive off spawn. Your exact drop spot is going to depend on what you and your teammates are comfortable with and simply whatever you enjoy playing at. If you're curious, I typically grind arena in duos and trios, and some of the main spots that we tend to land include Logjam Lumberyard, Rocky Reels, and Sleepy Sound. The thing that all these spots have in common that you might notice is they're pretty moderate in terms of population and have pretty solid loot. I also strongly recommend that you land somewhere you can find Spider-Man webs, that way you can easily rotate around the map as well. Typically off spawn, my teammates and I will clear out our main POI, then rotate straight toward the nearest web slinger rotation and start pushing players. For example, you have web slingers at the bridge south of Logjam, some at the canyon south of Rocky Reels, and in the forest just west of Sleepy Sound. So every spot that my team lands at has web slingers easily available. I'm sure the web slingers are going to be removed eventually, but there always are mobility items in the game, so other options like rifts, cars, and boats are also really important to have near your spot as well. Aside from where you actually land though, the main key in early game is really going to be coordination. Your team needs to stick together, be aggressive in fights, and really just be good at fighting overall. If your team fits all this criteria, then your early game should go smooth. On to mid game though, and this is where things get a little bit more mixed up in terms of playstyle, and this is going to be more based on your skill set either as a solo or as a team. When I play duos and trios, I usually play with people who are good at W keying just like I am. So we typically do play a hardcore W key playstyle, and we only stop W keying when there are no smart pushes to make or we're in shambles and need to recoup. Especially with the spider webs, it's super easy to play like that. But some of you guys might be worse at W keying and might opt for a more passive playstyle. For those of you who do fit that description, it's probably smart to play the dead side of zone, aka the quiet areas where people aren't rotating, and only take fights where you're a fair distance from other teams and you can focus on the players at hand. That way you're able to focus on your fight, get the other team's loot and materials, and gain some points all in a relatively safe manner assuming you win the fight. Another key in mid game is to keep your eye on placement and be ready to adjust your playstyle based on it. For example, let's say you're playing trios where all the placement points come in top 10 in champs. Once you do reach top 10, placement points are basically going to come flying in, and unless you're on an absolute roll with insane loot, you might want to ease off on the W keying to set up and chill for placement points. I know a lot of people have this hardcore W key attitude, and I definitely fit into that that category, don't get me wrong, but you're not obligated to W key at all times, especially if you have stuff like launch pads you can use to win the game. Winning a game is 175 points, which is equal to 17.5 kills. If you're able to get some solid kills in early game and the earlier parts of mid game, and players are starting to kind of die out and you're getting placement, then you might prefer to simply take the safe placement points over W keying and risking your game while there are tons of points to be gained. Basically what I'm saying is, if the benefits of getting placement outweigh the benefits of getting kills, then don't worry about getting kills. Now, once again, this is really going to depend on you though. Some of you guys watching this video might be the type to simply W key it out and not stop unless you're forced to, and me and my teammates tend to fit into that category. As I said before, unless we're in shambles or we have no smart fights to take, we're typically going to be web slinging around the map and running through players left and right. But the majority of you guys watching probably aren't at the confidence and fighting level needed to do that, and it's important for you to know that easing off the W keying in favor of getting some placement points is a perfectly sound idea. Just make sure that you're always ready, as there are quite a few players like me in the game who might give you a run for your money, or I guess placement points being the money in this case. Overall though, my point here is to keep your eyes on the player count and team count, and always be ready to adjust your playstyle based on those in mid game. This tip can make a huge difference with your points, especially in this season where placement points are so stacked towards the end of the game. If you don't remember, in earlier seasons it often was pretty spread out throughout the game, but now it's pretty much all at the absolute end of the game rather than being spread out. So once you're in top 10, you get absolutely barraged with placement points, but you don't get any until then. But with that said, there's no shame in backing off the W keying if you think you're going to get more points from placement. Moving on to the end game though, and this is pretty much the simplest part of the game. Assuming you had a solid mid game, you should be pretty set with decent loot for end game. If you're not, then of course you're going to want to focus on farming as much placement as you can, but if you are fairly stacked, then the formula is super simple. Stick together with your team, get frags when you need them, and constantly be on the lookout for opportunities to take high ground and win the game. As you probably know, high ground is the ultimate end game position. But one really weird thing I've noticed about this season with end game though is that oftentimes end game really doesn't even happen. Many games seem to be at the end point of mid game when they end, and it's something like 3rd or 4th zone when the final team is killed. There could be multiple reasons for that. Maybe it's because of the Spider-Man mythic, maybe it's due to the current timing since it's so early in the chapter and everyone's kind of W keying, or maybe it's another factor. The principles for endgame should mainly be applied when you do have a solid lobby, which I'm sure will be the norm again soon, but try not to get too caught up with the idea of endgame strategies unless you actually do have a solid endgame lobby. I'd say about 90% of the time right now in arena, my team and I wipe out the last opponents around 4th zone, which basically means we have no quote-unquote endgame, or at least a common idea of it. So once again, if you do run into a heavy endgame, then stick with your team, get impact frags as necessary, and be on the lookout for opportunities to take height. If your lobbies die out quickly the same way that mine do, then your main goal should be to rotate to every zone nice and early and simply get as many advantages as possible against the other teams in the lobby. Get to every zone fast so you don't have to worry about it, and try to hold the other teams by spraying them or fight them if you have the necessary supplies and they're in the zone. In essence, what I'm saying is play according to your situation and be ready to make adjustments to your strategy depending on the player count. But with all that said guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Overall, to gain 1,000 points per day in arena, the process is fairly simple. Find some solid teammates to run duos or trios with, and find a solid drop spot that you all like. Focus on winning your spawn fights, get looted and kitted up, and then play your mid game based on your comfort with W keying. You can either W key everyone like me and my team usually do, or you can play a more moderate playstyle such as W keying on the dead side of zone. Once placement points do begin coming in, then you may want to adjust based on that to farm up some extra placement points while others are fighting. And finally, in endgame, focus on high ground and focus on early rotations, and everything should go very smoothly. If this video helped you out, then be sure to drop a like on it, and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more content just like this in the future. I'm thinking of doing some more fighting videos for Arena to show you all some useful fighting tips and strategies, so definitely let me know down in the comments if you're interested in seeing that. I was kind of thinking of going into some of my own fights from Arena and kind of showing you guys some good and bad examples of things I do, and kind of just taking that opportunity to learn from it. So if that stuff sounds cool to you, then definitely let me know down in the comments. And finally, if you want to help your boy out a bit extra, then consider using code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free for you, and I really do appreciate it a ton. But with that said, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.